Welcome back, guys. I am super excited. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and today I'm gonna do a head-to-head comparison of the Rhino versus the Edelkrone Slider. I get this question more than anything from everybody about film gear. And since I'm a person that uses a slider on pretty much every single one of my shoots, I felt obligated as a filmmaker myself to go and compare these head to head for you guys so you can understand which one's gonna be best for you in some scenarios and which one's gonna be best for you in other scenarios. So let's get into it right now. And we're gonna start with specs. Forget the specs, because the reality is, when using a product, it's how it performs. They can all have this mumbo jumbo and data on their websites, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how easy this is to use, what's the price of the product, and is it gonna perform and do everything that I need it to do better than its competitor. So we're gonna break this competition into 4 distinct categories. First is price, then it's gonna be physical specs, then it's gonna be the UI and operating interface, and then fourth is gonna be movement tests. And the way that we're gonna do this rating is we're gonna go each round head to head, and if it wins, it gets a chili pepper, like this.
So hot.
Disclaimer, before we start this test, I just have to put out 3 disclaimers for you guys. The first one is that I am not paid by either Edelkrone or Rhino to create this. 2, both of these companies have given me free products, and even though that they've given me free products, I am not required by either one of these companies to produce any kind of results for this test. And 3, I've been using Edelkrone for quite a bit longer, so I'm a little bit more used to it, but also with that, Edelkrone is always updating their parts and specs, so this is the version 2 instead of the version 3, and then the version 4 instead of the version 5. So those are the disclaimers that I want to start with before we jump into this. All right, so let's start with the first category, and that's price. Both of these prices that I'm gonna compare are not their package prices. This is just what we used in this competition. Let's break down the Edelkrone first. What we have here is the Head Plus with the Slider Plus slide module. We have the Slide Plus Pro Long rails, which range at 16.8 inches when on a table and 34.8 inches on a tripod. This also comes with AC adapters and a Canon LP battery brackets, but you can choose which battery adapters that you want for this product. The total price for this product is $2,847.95 when getting their package. And on the other side, the Rhino. We have the Rhino Arc 2 with the 42-inch Pro rails and the Rhino Slider motor. And this total cost is $2,550. Both of these sliders are very similar in price when upgrading them to the best of their specs, but Rhino takes the cake being about $300 cheaper. So let's now get into the physical specs. And I said forget specs earlier, but some specs are important. All I'm trying to say is that you really want to test the products and actually use them and have a hands-on use. Otherwise, this is all meaningless and useless. But we're gonna start with length. We have the Rhino, which is 42 inches long. The Edelkrone only ranges in at 34.8, and that's if it is on a tripod. So the reality with the length, it's gonna go to Rhino for that. So 2 chili peppers for Rhino, 0 for Edelkrone at this point. When it comes to weight, we did a weight test with my scale, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, so let's go to past Austin. Right now I have everything attached besides the camera, because obviously everybody has different size cameras. And what we're gonna do here is, because obviously this is not gonna fit on our scale, is we put this wood plank, which is 7.7 pounds, and we're just gonna subtract that from both of the slider weights now. So let's do this one first. 20.6 pounds, and then if we minus that by 7.7, 12.9 pounds. So now we're gonna be putting the Rhino onto the scale and seeing how much it weighs. All right, 26.4 minus 7.7, that is 18.7 pounds. The Rhino Slider is 5.8 pounds heavier than the Edelkrone Slider. And it looks like Edelkrone won the weight competition. 1 chili pepper to the Edelkrone. The next round is travel and compactness, and it's kind of obvious which one is more compact. Stacking these up side by side, the Rhino is much longer and it's much heavier. So something to travel with is gonna be this. This also folds up in itself because you can break it down. So Edelkrone wins this round. So it's 2-2, and we're going into the next category, which is UI and how the functionality of these two sliders work. First thing diving into the Rhino UI is that what's pretty cool is that you can control everything right here without an app. So I can go into here and control everything and selecting my keyframes, controlling it, pointing the two positions, and making everything work just in here. So opening the app, it says it's searching for ARC2, and you just connect. You're only connecting to one device because this is plugged in and they operate as one. They have their different modes right here, tracker, time lapse, and video. We're gonna only be using video because that's what we'd be using in a product video shoot. So opening it up right here. And right down here, you can see that you have your slider function, which is kind of like this trackpad looking thing. And then same with the pan and tilt like that. And you can see how that operates. The next thing is they have a focus just like the Edelkrone does right here on the right-hand side. And then the difference is, key difference is, for speed, it's set into a duration from anywhere from whatever length you want to go up to on 60 seconds, all the way down to 12 seconds for your speed. You also have a loop on and off function, which you don't have unless you use the sequencer on the Edelkrone. And this allows you, once you set your key points, because it works a little bit differently, that it can just keep going back and forth. So let me show you guys how to set your key points on here. So for example, let's say our first key point is right here. We go to add keyframe to begin by clicking there, and then saying, you can adjust it first and make sure it's all right there, press the check mark, and then now we have to go get it to our other keyframe. So say our next keyframe is right here, and we say add keyframe and check. And now what you can do is go start, but before you have to start, it has to move back to the first keyframe. Now that it's moved back to the first keyframe, we have our seconds already set. You have to set all that beforehand. You press start. And now it's gonna go in that 12-second iteration from there to there. That is the Rhino Arc 2 app. So going into the app, clicking on it, you have two options where you can manual pair, and select exactly what you want, or you can smart pair where it picks up the different devices. Both of these devices register separately. So when I go into smart pairing, I can go start and it's gonna find them, boom, and picks them up like that. Up top, you have your triggers where you can slide back and forth like this. You have your battery power up in the top left-hand corner. You have your pan and tilt functions right here. It's super easy when starting this app up. Everything is right on this home screen that you need. And then down below you have time lapse, you have key pose, which you have to have slot selected, sequencer, where you can have to have 3 different poses selected. You have target mode and stop motion. The one that I use is key pose or sequencer for what I do. Another cool feature about this is, say if we select our pose here, then you can take a picture like so and go doop. And then that's to remind yourself, and you have that pose locked in right there. Another feature that I really like about this and the usability of this is, say you're trying to do a parallax like we were doing in one of our tests, and we took out the tilt. Now all it will do is pan when using the trigger. You're not gonna be able to tilt at all. And that allows it to be a lot easier if you wanna keep the same plane for a parallax kind of effect. The other thing that's obviously gonna be pointed out between the Edelkrone and the Rhino app is that you have 6 poses that you can do, and you have S curves for your starting speed. So say if we wanted to, let's move this a little bit forward like this, to right there. And now we have an ease in and ease out function. If I click on it like this, we're gonna ease in and out like that. Or we can do an aggressive start like this, where it just shoots out. And that's really cool. Another thing is these poses that you have are interchangeable. You can stop at any point, you can start at any point, you can start from either one. Whereas with the Rhino, you always have to reset to point 1 and then change it like that, which is a little bit more time consuming and tedious. It is safe to say that the UI on the Edelkrone stands above the one on the Rhino, taking all 4 categories. Now let's jump in to movement. To me, one of the most important things, because this is the hands-on section and what you're gonna see when shooting through the camera. Let's do it. The first test that we did was smoothness by hand, where we shot it with a 50 and a 100mm lens. For these tests, every single test that we're gonna be doing today, we're not gonna be slowing it down. So it's gonna be 24 frames. We're not gonna use any warp stabilizer because I wanna show you guys how steady these sliders are by themselves. 50 on Edelkrone, handheld, take 1. So one thing I'm noticing with the handheld, I have the tripod head locked off, but when I go over this, because of the magnets underneath here, is that you definitely get some jolt movement where it goes like this. It catches on itself as you're sliding. Now to do the Rhino handheld. Handheld, Edelkrone, 100, take 1. 100 macro on the Rhino handheld, smoothness test, take 1. Smoothness by hand is super important personally to me in product videos, because a lot of the time I don't want to set up the motors, I don't want to set up any of that because I have advantages when using my hand and I can control it a lot more to where I want it, the speed and push in that both of these machines just can't produce. So smoothness by hand is super important. After setting it up on the tripod, it was very obvious that the build of the Rhino is a lot steadier, and Rhino takes the win for both the 50 and the 100mm on smoothness by hand. 2 chili peppers for Rhino. So now we're at 4 to 6 on the chili peppers. Let's dive into smoothness by the motors itself. Edelkrone, 100 macro, smooth test, 1. So smooth test, part 2, just the slider, fastest speed. Faster speed, just motor, and go. It's obvious to see that the Rhino slide module is steadier than the Edelkrone slide module. So 1 chili pepper, 2 Rhino. Now let's dive into the steadiness of the head and the slider on both of these. Edelkrone at 25% speed with head and slider motor. A smooth test, 3. After looking at the footage, it is easy to see that the Rhino is steadier and smoother in this section as well. So now it's tied 6 to 6. Next, we're gonna do a full speed parallax where the slider is going side to side on the subject and we have the head pointing at the subject the whole time. What I've noticed with the Edelkrone over the Rhino and using the app, it takes less time to set up your shots. It's a little bit of a quicker process when using this. Now I'm just gonna set my key points right here and here, and we're gonna be good to go. So another thing that I noticed that I'm not a big fan of with the Rhino is that when you set your key point, after you set your key points and you want to say move the camera to the center or anything like that, you can't, it won't freely move. You actually have to go back and say set new points just to freely move the app. I have to go actually to edit move right here because it won't freely move unless I go to the edit move and then say select, and then I have to move it. So this is a little bit more time consuming when resetting your points. Full speed parallax on Rhino, 100, go. Another thing that I was talking about earlier is, so for example, say we want to go to the beginning and how it's parallaxing perfectly. When you go to the start move, it for some reason, it will just do its own movement. See how it's already parallaxed way off, or the head is already panned way off and now it's going. I know it doesn't seem like much of a big deal, but if you are very close to the subject and say, for example, you are trying to use the probe lens, you can knock the object. After looking at the footage, we've tried our best to discern if there's a winner, but both of them look so steady. Even when pushing in at on the footage itself digitally, we could not tell the difference between the two, and that is a draw. So no chili peppers for this round. Next, let's use the probe for smoothness. So we're gonna do two types of pushing in on the subject, one that goes through and then one that just goes above and close. Edelkrone Steadiness Test Probe Lens version 1. Pretty steady. After looking at the footage again, it looks like the Rhino Slider is steadier. So on smoothness, it looks like the Rhino takes the cake, so now it pushes ahead 7.6 on the chili pepper scale. I've been using the Edelkrone a lot, and one thing that I've always wished for is that it's a little bit faster, and in post, I have to speed up a lot of my footage sometimes. A very important test to me was speed. On your marks, get set, go. Woo-wee. So it's safe to say that the Rhino is faster. Another chili pepper to Rhino. The next section, even though that both of these cameras have their payloads on their websites, I wanted to test my biggest camera with one of my heaviest lenses and see if it can handle that. Let's weigh this bad boy. Bum, 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 bum. Alrighty. And the magical weight is, I don't know, kilograms? How do I change this? How do you reset the weight? Hold up. Where's the user manual for this? kg to lbs, and that is 10.9 pounds. Let's just round up. 11 pounds is what we're gonna see if this slider can handle. Now, Ursa weight test, full speed, take 1. It holds. How do we make this heavier? Looks pretty smooth. Handling the weight pretty well. All right, now let's just do a tilt up and see how it goes. I have a feeling it's not gonna go too far, but it's going. Still handling. Well, there you go. And that is our max weight test. Looks like the Edelkrone handles it perfectly fine. All right, final weight load of these two together. 13.1 pounds. All right, so now we're gonna do the Ursa weight test on the Rhino. It looks like it handles fine. Let's tilt it and do that real fast, see if it holds. It's holding.
catching a little bit right there. Seems to be working pretty fine.
Both of them remarkably handled the weight really well. We are gonna say that it's a draw. We're now gonna go into sound. What we did is we put a shotgun microphone onto one of our cameras and kept it at the same distance for each of these tests.
Edelkrone audio recording, take 1. Rhino Slider noise, take 1. So Rhino Slider audio, take 2.
So the interesting thing is when we were testing this out, we found out that the Rhino is much quieter at slower speeds, while the Edelkrone is much quieter at faster speeds. And so with that being said, this is a draw, no chili peppers for the sound test. So the next test is max angle. And to note before going into this test, this is the version before their new version that apparently can handle angles better.
Oh, interesting. I'm getting a warning already from the Edelkrone app saying that my angle is too steep and that I need a newer piece of equipment to have an incline. We're gonna do this anyways. Confirm. And let's try to slide. Oh, other way. Nope. Nope. If I push it a little bit, if I help it, it works, but nope. Let's try a little bit less of an angle. Oh, nope. Let's try a lighter lens maybe. All right, let's try this again. Nope. And it does not handle this weight either. Virtually, the Edelkrone cannot handle any angle unless you update to their newer slider motor, but I don't know how the Rhino handles yet, so let's try that out. The first angle that we're gonna try is the less of the two angles, just to see if it can actually handle that first before we move on to the steeper angle. Here we go. I think it's safe to say that there is no issues with it sliding. Shall we go steeper? All right. Not only does it go all the way up, all the way down, so let's make it go even steeper. Oh, you wanna do it like that? We're still not on the torque motor, we're using only the speed motor, which is not meant for the incline, but we're gonna keep testing it. Doesn't seem to have a problem. Shall we go steeper? Is that how steep we're going? Can we go? Oh, geez. And we've hit our max.
Super safe to say that the Rhino handles much better at angles, and even though this is not their motor that's built for angles. So the next test that we're doing is tilt and rotation. Well, it looks like it goes all the way around and it's probably not gonna stop, where the Rhino will stop eventually because you're gonna wrap the cord around it. All right, let's test the tilt. All the way down. Looks like it goes unnecessarily far down. Oh, and it just lost power. Let's see if we can get it back up. Oh, it's struggling. There we go. So it looks like it tilts all the way down, but then too much weight, so it will lose it and you have to bring it back. Now let's see the other way and see how far it tilts up. These are things that you're probably never gonna be doing with it unless you're doing time lapses or Astro time lapses, but it's still a good thing to check out. Ooh. And there you go. Come back down to earth. So it looks like you can't go much farther than this with at least the 1DX until it is too heavy for the motor and just gives up. Good things to know when using this. Now let's check out the Rhino. First start with the pan. Obviously the Rhino has a cord, so we'll see if that becomes an issue. But if it can make it 360, I'd say it's a fair draw, because why would you need to spin around more than 360? It goes all the way around. I mean, I wouldn't keep doing it. All right, so now we're gonna test the tilt function. All right, so it's stopped now, but we don't really have any more space to go any farther. That's 90 degrees, and it's picking itself back up. Coming down, make sure it doesn't hit that.
we are completely down the other way and it still works.
The winner for rotation and tilt is the Rhino. Even though that it does have a cord, it can do the 360 like I said. It can also handle completely going 90 degrees where the Edelkrone motor gives up and drops the lens. All right, you guys, so that is it for the head-to-head. With chili peppers, the Rhino takes the lead, but the key takeaways here is you have to really figure out what's more important to you, because I don't think there's a clear winner in the two. Their prices are super close. They're both really good sliders. So you really gotta ask yourself, are you looking for more stable movement or better UI and compactability? Because that's really the key differences between these two. And in the end, it's really what's gonna benefit you for the type of filmmaking that you do. Both are great and amazing products. Both of them have great customer support. And then the reality is, which one are you gonna be walking away with that you're gonna be more happy with? I hope you guys enjoyed this head-to-head review. Comment below with which one you think is better fit for you. And until next time,